West Virginia has experienced a dramatic expansion of educational freedom, from the state legislature passing a near universal education savings account program called the Hope Scholarship, to loosening state compulsory school attendance laws for participants of learning pods and microschools. The Hope Scholarship program, which thousands of families were planning on using this coming academic year to help them exit an assigned district school, is currently in the middle of a legal battle, but the enthusiasm for greater education options and the embrace of innovative K-12 learning models continues unabated. Microschools, learning pods, homeschooling collaboratives, and low-cost private schools are launching or expanding to meet parent demand for more education possibilities. The education entrepreneurs who are creating these models are diverse in their educational philosophies, from classical education to self-directed learning, and all approaches in between, building a dynamic landscape of learning options from which families can choose. Our guest today is one of these visionary West Virginia education entrepreneurs. Katie Switzer is a mom of 4 children, ages 6, 4, 3, and 1, and the founder of the Monongalia Family Forest School, which offers weekly part-time nature-based education for homeschoolers, as well as weekend programming for the broader community. She launched the program last fall, and it quickly doubled in size as families gravitated to her forest-focused learning format. Her program also recently won a grant from the VELA Education Fund, a philanthropic nonprofit whose goal is to provide startup and expansion support for non-traditional K-12 learning models. Katie Switzer, welcome to the LiberatED podcast.
Thanks for having me, Carrie.
I'm so glad you're here. There's so much going on in West Virginia that I wanted to bring you on to talk about that and your role really in, again, expanding these education options to the families of West Virginia. So let's start with that. Can you tell us a little bit about you, your family, and why you decided to create the Monongalia Family Forest School?
So I'm always been really interested in alternative schooling models. I just love the idea of letting kids explore and build their confidence in things. Like when I was a kid, I didn't have a lot of confidence, and it affected me like well into adulthood, that I was always like very apologetic and sort of afraid to stick my neck out there. I had a hard time socially. And so I used to read like all these really cool articles about forest school in Europe and how they would start at kindergarten and get these kids out and doing stuff. And I saw that there's lots of like programs out there that are more activity based, like kindergarten and stuff like that for young kids. But I wanted it to be like a true like nature based material program. And so I looked around in my community to find something like that. And what I discovered is that the only program locally that might be loosely identified as a forest school is they don't even open their programming until the child is entering 2nd grade. So they have to be 7 or 8. And my oldest child at the time was only, I think, 4, maybe 5, maybe had just turned 5. And I thought, I really just want something that my kids can do. So I was talking to my friend about it over lunch, and she's like, oh yeah, if you start something like that, she's like, I'll bring my family. And that's kind of how it started. I had been using a homeschool program called Your Natural Learner from my friend Leah McDermott, who's like totally wonderful and awesome. And I reached out to her and I was like, hey, you run a forest school. Like, what kind of curriculum do you use? And she's like, I wrote one. So I got a copy of her curriculum. I threw up a website in like 24 hours and I got 13 families to sign up for the first fall. This was last fall. And it was great. It was really scary for me to start it because I'm not a super social person. And so I had all these families that I didn't know. I expected it to be like mostly our friends and family, but the word of mouth got out and we had a lot of families that had never met me before. And so like, I think the first day that we did forest school, we went out, it went really well. And I came home and threw up because I was so nervous. And I just like, it was so hard to just put yourself out there like that. I'm thinking like, oh, maybe people won't like it, or maybe it's not like forest schooly enough. Like, do I need to force activities on the kids? No, that's not what I want. I want them to explore freely. And you feel like this weird obligation to like satisfy everybody who signs up. And that's like a really hard thing to do. So over the fall, I built a lot of confidence. Like I tried out different curriculums from Leah and other people. I figured out how to take each class and make it unique based on the location we're at and the weather. And I just got awesome feedback. So in the spring, I decided to do it again. And we got 28 families that signed up in the spring. So we more than doubled it. And we added a day. So we started out Saturday mornings only, just 8:30 to or 9:30 to 11:30 on Saturday mornings. And we would go to a local park. So we didn't have to have a property or anything. And what is nice about it, we call it Family Forest School because it helps us keep costs down to make it affordable for anybody, because we're not paying for staffing and childcare and dealing with like, you know, DHHR laws or whatever it is that's out there. So that helps us a lot because the parents come, and it also gives us an opportunity to show the parents that are in the program how capable their children are. I try to build the curriculum around like supervised risk taking. We go to locations that have water with, you know, burbling streams with rocks and logs they can climb on. And we offer, you know, extension hiking activities at most of the locations. So the families are wanting to be confident and they want to walk more, they can hike after we do the invitations. And we always set up the invitations. We tell the kids what they are. And like half the time, you know, only 25% of the kids choose to do an activity because they're having so much fun just like exploring the location and wandering around. And it takes the pressure off the parents because they realize like, I don't need to entertain my kids. I could just take them out the woods and they have a great time without any effort on my part. Just being there is a stimulating learning activity for kids. So we started out serving a wider age range because the curriculum that we had was written for like ages, I don't know, 4 to 10, and that was not a good age range. So in the spring, we pared it back to like 3 to 7, and that seems to be a sweet spot. The 3 to 7-year-olds, they kind of like the 7-year-olds help the 3-year-olds. And because it's a family forest school, we also get older siblings who tend to come like 10, 12, 13-year-olds, and they become the helpers. So they'll help me set up activities. They help me to show the kids what to do without doing it for them. And they get really into that role. Like they want to be a part of the forest school. And it's so fun to watch that like mentorship start to happen. And now that we're into the fall, we just started signups and I already have a bunch of families, and I'm pretty sure we're going to fill up before we get to the date that we start in September. But I've learned so much over the last year about, you know, how to set it up, how to do the marketing, how to communicate with parents, you know, what to do if somebody's unhappy, because you're always going to have somebody that it doesn't work, or, you know, they have a family thing that happens, and like how to deal with that gracefully. And just, it's been a super awesome learning experience for me too, not just the kids that attend. But yeah, Family Forest School, I love it because I think anybody could set up a forest school the way that I have, and you don't have to have a lot of resources or money to set it up. It's really very inexpensive and easy and fun.
Well, first, congratulations on such swift success, and the more than doubling in size, and now continuing to have parents attracted to the model. So kudos to you for that. You know, a couple of things you said. One is I really appreciate your honesty about the anxiety and uncertainty of starting this program, and then, you know, all of the nerves that came with the first day, and you just dove right in. I think sometimes we overlook that. We think, oh, entrepreneurs are, you know, just intrepid and nothing, you know, bothers them, nothing gets in their way. And yet, you know, thank you for your honesty of saying, well, it may look like that on the outside, but on the inside, it can be really frightening, and there can be a lot of uncertainty and feelings of inadequacy. So, you know, again, pushing through that for that success to occur, I think is really admirable. And then I think the other thing you said about starting small is another really great lesson for these education entrepreneurs, starting just on a Saturday morning and then having it grow from there. So now that you look ahead to fall and you're starting to have your registrations come in, what is fall looking like? Is it going to be expanded even more? Does it depend on kind of the composition of the families you get? What are your hopes and goals for the coming year?
Yeah. So I took some of the feedback we had from the spring and I've tried to incorporate that into our fall planning. And some of that was just like, we had a couple locations that we would visit more than once in the spring, and people said, we just love seeing new ones. So in the fall, all but one location we only visit once. And the only reason why I visit the same location twice is because I think it's really important as part of the curriculum to show the kids, here's what it looked like at the beginning and here's what it looks like at the end, so they can see that fall transition and like get an understanding of like what's happening with the trees and like what to expect as the season goes along. So we kept that part of the fall program specifically. I also am working with our local college, West Virginia University, to see if I can get some forestry students to hire and do internships under our forest school. So I'm planning to hire at least a couple of them to come and help facilitate forest school. And then like if I'm sick or, I have a day that I can't attend, I will have forestry students there, and then they get experience for their resume on helping to work with the public and teach them about different aspects of it. Other things that we like to do is to donate a little money to the locations that we go to, because we go to free, like publicly available locations. Some of them are run by nonprofits. Some of them are run by like the local parks service. So we try to like give back a little bit to that, especially as we've been growing. I'm able to do more of that. And the first season, like I didn't know what I was doing. And I had a really hard time figuring out how to make all of the finances work. But now I feel a lot more confident that I can give back to the community that we're in. I'm also hoping to get a couple of scholarship students in. So just like to be able to cover the cost of like, I'm adding in the t-shirts and survival bands this fall. Because last year I gave a bunch of like little compasses away and the kids went nuts for them, but they would get lost. And they were also like really small. So I was worried about younger siblings. So this way it's like a paracord survival bracelet and they can like bring it home and treasure it, hopefully forever. But I want to try to just cover those costs for some families that maybe can't afford, but we do try to keep it super affordable. So I don't usually have a lot of families that say, oh, it's too much money, because things are so expensive now that a lot of people look at forest school and the cost of running it isn't very high. The challenge is the time, like paying somebody to help. I spend 4 hours a week just teaching the forest school, 2 hours on Saturdays and 2 hours on a weekday. But then there's also the driving, and you have to drive to it. I have to prepare all the materials, and I do all the marketing myself. So it helps to have some VELA funds to help cover like our new website costs. We just put up a new website, and buying tools for it too. So this fall, I've wanted to do this for the whole year, but it's been hard to get the right materials going. I have tools that are appropriate for kids, like hand drills and small saws, that we can do some activities to make things with tools so they can get experience and build confidence with like, I'm going to cut some wood and make a cookie man or different things like that. So they can really start to practice those skills that they need out in the woods to be confident. So I'm super jazzed about that because I was able to buy a bunch of tools for it.
Amazing. Let's talk a little bit more about the VELA grant that you received. So VELA's mission really is to support these sort of non-traditional learning models, emerging K-12 schooling alternatives, and other kinds of innovative prototypes for education. What was that like for you when you applied and then were told that you received a grant? What was that reaction for you?
I couldn't believe it. Like, I really thought I was going to apply and never hear from them again. And so like when I got the email, I was like, wow, I can't believe that I won this grant. And it's life-changing for me because I want to take this money and spread family forest school everywhere. Like I know that there are other people out there that don't have access to forest school for their kids, or their teachers that just want to do something different and like run a forest school on Saturdays. And this model that I've created is not like, you don't need to have a lot of resources. You don't need to have a plot of land. Like I can help you to find locations where you live that you can go and run the forest school and make it really fun and really accessible and more of a traditional forest school than just an activity kind of thing. Like you don't just show up and get a box and say, oh, go enjoy being in the woods. This is like really encouraging kids to practice those skills, to learn how to move their bodies, to learn how to be confident and to enjoy nature and have a connection with it so that they're inspired to take care of the world that's around them. And I want one of these everywhere. Like every city should have a family forest school so that kids that are young can build these skills and confidence outdoors right away as soon as they're walking competently.
That's great. Yeah. And I would recommend anyone listening who is running or thinking of launching a one of these innovative learning models or schooling alternatives to look into the VELA Education Fund. They've issued almost 2,000 microgrants to programs just like yours. It's sort of philanthropy in action, trying to help activate this ecosystem of education options. So really exciting opportunities there for education entrepreneurs who are trying to innovate and create different kinds of learning prototypes. So I want to talk a little bit more about what's happening in your state of West Virginia. West Virginia really is among the top states to embrace education, innovation, and choice at the moment. So how do you think microschools, learning pods, homeschool collaboratives, forest programs like yours are changing the educational landscape in West Virginia?
Listen, West Virginia has been fighting with Mississippi for like a decade on who's at the bottom of the barrel for education. So I'm really proud of my state for finally standing up and saying, okay, enough is enough. We can't keep doing the same thing over and over again and expect different results, because even though we're from West Virginia, we're not insane. And so now, like, we just have so many opportunities now for kids. And there's been so many bills have gone through to like make it easier for people to access opportunities and changes. And for my family specifically, it's amazing because I have, one kid that's probably going to do fine in a traditional classroom. I don't know. He's a little bit socially, he likes to play independently, but there's nothing there. But I have a daughter who has special needs. And she has a motor neurological disorder called apraxia of speech, where she has difficulty getting the words out of her brain and to her mouth. And she also has dyslexia, or at least we think she does. She's pretty young, but she's showing all the signs, and they're typically well associated with each other. So we're expecting to see that. And the educational opportunities that are opening up in West Virginia give kids like my daughter so many options to be able to figure out what works best for them. Like maybe the public school is perfect because they have lots of access to therapies and different things, and that might be right for one family, but for my daughter, maybe she won't do so well in that environment. She's going to need some separate things. And because of compulsory education laws in West Virginia, we have some of the strictest compulsory education laws and also the strictest vaccination requirements in our state. So families really struggle to be able to find options that fit with their family, dynamic or whatever their child specifically needs. And our public schools are struggling with overcrowding, and they have a hard time meeting their obligations for IEPs, which are the individualized education plans for kids like my daughter. And the combination of the two makes it very hard because I'm scared about my daughter going to a traditional school, any traditional school really, because she has to go to therapy every week. And when she goes to therapy, we have to have an IEP that excuses her from school. So then we have to justify like that this one therapist is where we want her to go because we've seen her thrive there. And she's the only therapist in the state that specializes in my daughter's disorder. And it can take months to establish an IEP. And in West Virginia, it can take a lot of effort to get it followed. So I have a lot of fears associated with that. And I'm really excited to see that it's getting easier for our friends that also have special needs or just want to get out of an environment where they had a bully in their kid's classroom, like that they have some choice to go to a charter school or start to homeschool or start attending a co-op instead. I mean, it's just like, just because something is right for one child doesn't mean that it is for the other. And I think it's highly unreasonable to expect that so many children are going to thrive in the same exact environment based on their assigned zip code. So I'm excited to see it. Like, I'm curious to see what it looks like in West Virginia in 5 years, because I think we're going to start to see we're no longer sinking to the bottom in educational outcomes. And I live in the best school district in the state, and our literacy and math comprehension at graduation are both in the 50th percentile. Like that's pretty dismal. So we can do better, and we are. It's pretty exciting.
Yeah, it is exciting. And the Hope Scholarship Program was a near universal ESA. It was leading the country until Arizona swept in with a fully universal education savings account. But West Virginia went from sort of the bottom in terms of educational freedom to right near the top. And hopefully that continues. Of course, the Hope Scholarship is now entangled in some court battles, but we'll see how that plays out. You had said to me that you were planning on not having your forest program be a provider through the Hope Scholarship program, but you're still very much supportive of
Mhm.
the Hope Scholarship program and of education choice more broadly, of allowing taxpayer dollars to go directly to families and students as opposed to going directly to school systems. Can you talk a little bit more about that, about your views on education choice and the Hope program?
Yeah, I mean, I think that for the forest school perspective, like we are trying to serve that foundation of younger kids so that once they get into traditional schooling, they become like ready for it and they're competent and the parents know better what their child's learning style is. So that's why we don't really plan to be a Hope Scholarship provider because we serve families with younger kids that aren't school age mostly. But I would really like to see the opportunities sort of expand out for children like my daughter that are special needs or, whatever it might be, because so many young families just leave West Virginia because they're unhappy with the educational opportunities that were so limited here. And this will be the first year that we really have access to these. This will be the first year that there's charter schools. Hopefully, it'll be the first year we can access the Hope Scholarship. And it's also the first year that the new micro school laws that have loosened up a little bit are going to be available. So I really expect to see a lot of great opportunities for kids, much better outcomes, and that families with small children like mine are going to start to think about staying because we have these opportunities for our kids and we don't have to just accept being at the bottom. We can ask for more and we can demand more for our kids because they really are they're the customers. The kids are the customers and we haven't served them very well. And I'm glad to see that we're trying to because they deserve it.
That's so great. Yeah, and so you mentioned that there is much more interest now in microschools and alternative learning models. Why do you think families are gravitating toward these bottom-up, decentralized learning programs like yours? I mean, seeing your program more than double in size in its first year, why are families attracted to these emerging models?
I think parents just know that smaller class sizes and individualized learning has better outcomes. Like we just know as parents. I mean, it's obvious, right? If your kid's getting more one-on-one help with school or your kid's in an environment that's a better fit for them and you have choice. And that's not just for like conservative Christian families that are looking for private schooling. We're talking about like even kids that are LGBTQ that are looking for, a school that can fit their needs where they're around other kids that have similar challenges, similar lifestyles, similar interests, and being able to connect with each other in a place that's comfortable for everybody. It's good for all kids. It's good for all of them. And I'm really proud of my state for making a step out to make these changes because what we've been doing hasn't been working.
Right. I mean, we really need to encourage this diverse marketplace or diverse ecosystem of education options that allows that kind of choice and customization in education that we have in all other areas of our lives. We have so
Yeah.
much ability to personalize other parts of our life, other consumer choices, but when it comes to education, it tends to be very one size fits all. So this is definitely a step in the right direction. And I wonder if you can speak to what your sense is of some of the barriers that education entrepreneurs in West Virginia might face if they want to launch a micro school or a program like yours. I think you kind of alluded to this earlier, where you specifically chose to meet in public places to sort of avoid some of the challenges around starting a brick and mortar program. But what are some of those regulatory or policy barriers to entry for education entrepreneurs in West Virginia?
Well, it's very confusing. Like, our local charter school even is having difficulty navigating, like, do they fall under DHHR or do they fall under the school system? Like West Virginia policy is not, let's just say that West Virginia legislators are not really good at execution. And so you sort of get like these really great ideas and these visionary things, but then when it comes down to actually like making it happen, they're just kind of like, okay, somebody else figure this out. And it leaves people like me kind of going, okay, I'm not sure how to navigate this. Like, how do I get funding? Like, I feel so lucky and blessed and grateful to have stumbled upon VELA because I don't know that there's anything like that in West Virginia that you can get help from, West Virginia people that want to help West Virginia kids. I mean, I'm not aware of any specific program for that, but I would love to see that. And if anybody's listening to this in West Virginia that wants to reach out for me, like, let's do it together. I'll help you administrate it because it would be amazing. But I don't know. It's hard to know like what laws relate to me. How do I get insurance? Like even just simple stuff like setting up a website. I mean, that's not easy and it can be really expensive if you pay someone else to do it. Like even marketing emails, like West Virginia doesn't have a lot of entrepreneurs that can mentor and help, especially not in education. So the more of us that are around, or the more people from outside the state that want to reach out and help people in West Virginia, we are all for it, please, because the more the merrier, as far as I'm concerned, to help these kids, get the best education they can get and hopefully stay in the state, because West Virginia is the most beautiful state in the nation. I do not care where you live. Do not argue with me. You can fight me, but West Virginia is gorgeous. It is gorgeous. It's just, I've lived in 7 states and West Virginia is the most beautiful.
Well, entrepreneurship is difficult under even the best circumstances. And it seems like our goal should be to reduce barriers to entrepreneurship, to encourage invention and innovation and progress and potential that comes from entrepreneurship. So any way that we can kind of simplify these rules or deregulate to make it easier for entrepreneurs to start microschools and pods and homeschool collaboratives and so on, that would be a win for West Virginia families and families around the country for sure. So, you mentioned that you think that there should be, a forest school in every community, and you are going to try your best to see that that happens. I wonder if you can talk about some of your goals in helping to scale your family forest program and helping other education entrepreneurs inside West Virginia and outside of West Virginia to launch a similar model.
Yeah, so I think that anybody could run a family forest school no matter where you live. And even if you just want to do it part-time on Saturday mornings to get a little bit of income to help your family, and you're passionate about working with kids, even teachers that just want to do something a little different on the weekends, Family Forest School is so easy to administer and run. I will train anybody to do it. Like I will share with you how to do the marketing, the curriculum, what to expect, how to deal with, a difficult situation, first aid kit information, anything. Like I would love to train people. So anybody who is interested in starting a family forest school, please reach out to me because I would be delighted to help you start a family forest school and even expand outside that if you're interested in having bigger forest schools, because that's part of my plan too.
And I think
I'm,
you already have a running list, right, of people
I
who
do.
have reached out to you, which is great that there is so much interest in this model and that you're trying to build a platform to help these education entrepreneurs create more of these forest programs. But you have other goals too. I wonder if you can share a little bit more about some of your vision.
So I mentioned that West Virginia is the most beautiful state in the nation, right? And so part of my vision for our program is to is to find a piece of property that my husband and I can develop into a larger forest school. And ideally, we want to offer, some forest school stuff to homeschoolers, but I really want to follow my dream of having a kindergarten forest school where parents can bring their children to a European style, German style forest school at kindergarten age for a few overnights. So the kids can really experience independence and grow and have that time away from their family to figure out who they are when they're young. And those have been very successful in Germany and the Netherlands. And I want to see that here in the US. I've had so many parents that have said, this is so exciting to me, but there's nothing like that near us. And so I would like to serve families that are within 3 or 4 hours of where I live in Morgantown, West Virginia, and offer that as a service, as well as continue the family forest school. And, we've talked about selling our house and building a yurt so that we can live there and develop the land to really follow our dream. Like we are serious about it. So if there's anybody out there that is interested in such a thing or wants to help us to make that happen, please reach out to me about that too, because I would love to share with you our plans and get any help that is out there because I'm super excited about it.
It is really exciting. And, what do you see as sort of the future of education in West Virginia and across the country. Are you optimistic? What are your thoughts on what's to come?
I'm so optimistic. I think that the past model where the only thing available is a traditional public school is going to be falling away. And that's not to say that traditional public schools won't still be there. I think that they will, and I think that they'll serve children well. But I also think that you're going to be seeing more and more opportunities for, different types of learning styles, special needs kids, disabilities, kids that struggle socially, to find the place for them that's going to help them achieve the most success in their education, and to help them to be confident as kids, because I feel like helping kids to have confidence helps adults to be confident and to be able to contribute more to society as a whole. And I see that. I think it's going to happen. I see so much movement towards that. And it's like one of the few things that we can thank the pandemic for, in that we sort of like gave a kick in the butt to some of these legislators that knew it needed to happen, have dragged their feet for a while. There's just more and more support for it. And I want to see kids thrive at every type of school. So, traditional schools, charter schools, co-ops, homeschooling, I don't care. I just hope that you have an amazing experience and your children really thrive there.
So, Katie, if people want to reach out to you, either to get help from you in launching their own forest school in their community, or to help you with your goals, or just connect with you in other ways, what is the best way for them to reach you?
The best way for them to reach me is to send me an email at Katie, Katie, at monforestschool.org. And if you send me an email there, I will be sending you one back, and I'll be thrilled to hear from you.
Great. And we'll put those links in the show notes. But again, it's MON, forestschool.org is the website. And anything else you want to add, Katie, about kind of what the next year is going to be like for you and your sort of future expectations?
I am just really excited to see what happens. It's going to be awesome. And the more families that I can serve and the more kids that I get to see running around in the forest, getting dirty and climbing on logs, it makes my heart so full. So I can't wait.
Katie Switzer, thank you again for being on the LiberatED podcast.
Thank you for having me, Carrie.